We look at history's greatest icons and often assume they were destined for that peak from birth. We see the final achievement and tell ourselves the path was always clear for them. This creates the myth of the perfect starting line. It is the societal belief that world-changing impact is reserved for those who begin with health, wealth, and institutional backing already in place. But look at where these icons actually began. When we plot their starting points on this axis, we don't see a head start. We see profound deficits, lives starting far below the zero line of basic privilege. This raises a question about the nature of human potential. Is there any category of disadvantage so severe that it cannot be bypassed? The perfect starting line isn't a requirement, it's a statistical outlier. The evidence suggests that extreme success is frequently built on a foundation of extreme disadvantage. Material ruin is often the first barrier we cite. Starting with nothing is a deficit that most of us consider a fatal mathematical blow to any future success. Take the case of an 8-year-old boy in a small village, forced to sell newspapers on the street just to help his family survive the day. That boy was APJ Abdul Kalam, who leveraged that survivalist drive to eventually lead his entire nation as president. Or consider a man whose material possessions were so sparse they could be reduced to a single piece of hand-spun cloth. Gandhi's lack of resources didn't diminish his reach, it defined it. Today, his face is the one permanently stamped on the very currency he lived without. In modern business, we assume scale requires massive infrastructure, but look at this residential garage door. This was the total physical and financial limit of a new startup. Jeff Bezos used that cramped, mundane space to build a logistics network capable of selling virtually everything on Earth online. A total lack of capital only dictates where you take your first step. It has no power over where you take your last. Then there are institutional barriers, the psychological weight of the world actively and repeatedly telling you that you don't belong. This was the physical reality for a man locked in this specific cell for 27 years, isolated from the society he wanted to change. Nelson Mandela stepped out of these bars to lead the very government that had imprisoned him. Corporate rejection can feel just as final. Imagine the persistence required to keep going after being rejected for 30 consecutive jobs. Jack Ma took that institutional failure and used it as the fuel to build Alibaba into a global empire. We see it in education too. A young boy was officially expelled from his school because his teachers labeled him feeble-minded. That boy was Thomas Edison, who went on to register over 1,000 patents and build the laboratory that lit the modern world. And we see it in Steve Jobs, a college dropout who bypassed the academic path to build the most influential tech company in history. Institutional validation is merely an opinion. It is a description of where you are, not a prediction of what you will become. The final constraint is biological, the hard limitations of the human body and the fears of the human mind. Consider a man completely confined to a wheelchair, stripped of his ability to move his limbs or even speak with his own voice. Despite that confinement, Stephen Hawking's intellect roamed the entire cosmos, unlocking mathematical mysteries that were previously invisible to science. Or look at the physical reality of a person born entirely without arms or legs. Nick Vujicic transformed that biological deficit into a global platform, traveling the world to speak to millions who have everything he lacks physically. Even our deepest fears can be navigated. Think about a child who was paralyzingly terrified of the dark. That child was Elon Musk, who is now architecting the plans for humanity to colonize the total darkness of space. These stories show that the human will operates independently of the vessel that carries it. When we look for the variable connecting these lives, we often look for luck, genius, or timing, but the data suggests something much more accessible. This diagram shows the moment the chain between origin and outcome is broken. It is the internal decision to treat a severe deficit as a piece of data to navigate, rather than a final verdict on your potential. We often view our own limitations as boundaries that define us. But for these individuals, their deficits were simply the environment they had to move through. not the wall they had to stop at. If the historical record shows that prison, paralysis, and extreme poverty can be transformed into these specific outcomes, then your starting line is a coordinate, not a trajectory. Your origins dictate where you begin, but they have no authority over where you finish.